Hi, my name's Nick Kupsey. I'm an editor here at Goldin. Now, these are all some of the greatest collectibles that I have ever seen. Now, I know you guys are used to seeing cards, game-used bats, and that type of thing, but toys are really starting to heat up, and especially ones from Star Wars. It was really Star Wars that kind of kicked off the modern golden age of action figures. From '78 to about 1994, basically most dolls, especially ones geared towards boys, were big. Like the original G.I. Joes were probably about that tall. Shrinking them down, making them, I think the word they used was toyetic, meaning that they could put them in things, play with them, you could carry them with you. Really, it was kind of like revolutionary for toys, as most of them were bulky, bigger, there wasn't a lot of accessories, maybe not even a story. These figures before me all had a backstory, or a cartoon, or a movie to back them up, like Star Wars. Now, released in 1978, they piggybacked off the popularity of the hit film of the same name, released in 1977. Matter of fact, these toys were so successful, George Lucas had the licensing rights to these toys that he was able to independently fund both Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi based off of money he made on these figures alone. So to start, we have Luke Skywalker. And what makes this so great is A, it's graded 90, near mint plus. Remarkable, being that it's almost 44 years old. Telescoping lightsaber. This was the figure to have when these toys were launched in 1978. And then we have, of course, the Princess Leia. Now these are all what they call 12 back, meaning that there's 12 illustrations of the first original figures on the back. Released in 1978, you have Princess Leia here in a nice clear bubble on a nice, beautiful, shiny card front. This is a really great specimen and one of the better ones to come to market recently. And it wasn't just Star Wars. Now, Star Wars did kick off the action figure craze of the late 70s and early 80s, but Mattel answered the call too, delivering HeMan in 1981-82.
This toy comes with something that can really open up a kid's imagination. Its own legend.
Now, what makes HeMan so great is that it was based off of both a cartoon and a mini comic book on the inside, with inspiration from Conan the Barbarian. And what makes this figure so awesome is that it's Skeletor, who was easily the greatest of all the 80s villains that came from cartoons. And the value of this, now a lot of the cards and a lot of the HeMan figures from this era were known for yellowing of the bubble. This one is completely clear, which is something you don't see on HeMan figures from that time. Things got even better for toys when Hasbro rebooted G.I. Joe in 1982. Now, the interesting thing to think about is that G.I. Joe was a hero from the 1950s and 60s and 70s all the way up. But it wasn't until a couple changes were made in cartoons that allowed G.I. Joe to kind of rise. The government eased restrictions on what could and couldn't be used in cartoons in terms of violence. And when that came out, G.I. Joe came with it. Now, the first 11 figures, and they were all straight arm. The other ones would have a swivel later, but the greatest of them all, Snake Eyes. G.I. Joe's Ninja and Commando, which basically makes him just the coolest figure that was ever created. But he was the only one in the original line that received his own body mold, and he was the only one who was a different color. The rest of them were either two blue Cobra figures or just green for the other figures. So there's just this air of mystery that happened with this figure that really attracted people, children to it, especially myself. And he was one of the few figures to receive different variations across the whole line. We're seeing increased interest in action figures, and there's good reason. Being that these are all over 40 years old, they've all held up remarkably well, and all of their franchises have perpetuated well into the 21st century. You can find these items and more at goldin.co.